Oh my goodness, Tracey Brown, I get some time with you today. What a privilege. I saw you on my calendar. I was like, yeah, I get to spend some time with Tracey. And oh, anybody listening in, you're in for a treat. We've got a dynamic, very accomplished executive with me today. So Tracey, for those people who do not know you that are listening in, you want to just sort of give a quick brief about yourself, what you do, who you are, etc.
Of course. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this today. This is always very exciting to be able to share my experiences, and especially through an organization like yours and with you,
Thank you.
and how much you empower women every day. So I'm Tracey Brown, and I'm the Senior Vice President and leader of business unit here at Fiserv, not the Pfizer, not the drug company, but the financial services company, and one of the largest and greatest financial services companies out there. So I run about a half a billion dollar business for the company, and really interact with our largest financial organizations.
So how long have you been at Fiserv?
4 years. Actually, just this month, I hit my 4-year anniversary, and it has been a very wonderful, educational, and challenging 4 years as a leader through all the change that we've been through.
You know, it's interesting because I think since you're in the financial services industry, I'm well aware of some of the challenges that are going on right now. How do you keep your team motivated and leaning in despite all of the challenges and obstacles that they're experiencing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like you said, most industries are going through some sort of challenge and change right now with just the economic outlook and various things. But in financial services, we are seeing seeing everyone being hit pretty hard with these changes.
Mm-hmm.
So and when you go through these changes, as most business leaders know, you have to make hard decisions. You have to reorganize your company to run more effectively, more efficiently. In many cases, you have to do more with less. So there's a lot of tough and hard decisions to being made. And sometimes those associates and those team members that are left behind after you see a reduction in force end up taking on a lot more work. There's stress. There's a lot more stress associated with that change and that worry of, am I going to have a job tomorrow, and how am I going to do the job that I've got in front of me today? So what I've found is, number one, you've got to tell the truth. You've got to be open, and you've got to be transparent with your employees. They don't want a leader that's going to come in and act like nothing's happened. They don't want somebody to sugarcoat it. So I sit down with my team and I talk to them about the reality of our situation and what we have in front of us.
Sure.
But then I also make a commitment to them, to their work-life balance, to them being who they need to be and who they need to be to their friends and their family. So we spend a lot of time talking about raising your hand when you're overwhelmed, when you need help, taking the time off to have your rest and relaxation. And then we just move forward. We have pizza parties, we go out for happy hours, we do fun things as a team. But what I will tell you, the number one thing that keeps teams, I believe, motivated and engaged through significant change is transparency and openness and support from their leaders. And so that's really what I try to do.
You know, it's interesting that you just blended the transparency piece with raising your hand, because a lot of people believe that if they raise their hand to a leader, that's a sign of weakness, when it's actually a sign of strength. Because we can't read your minds. We don't know exactly if you are overwhelmed. And by you acknowledging and giving permission, and I don't think many leaders give permission to, hey, raise your hand if you're overwhelmed. And I say that, I think they mean it, but they may not verbalize it.
I think it's funny. I just had this conversation yesterday with a group of associates, and prior leaders before them, it was held as they don't know how to do their job, or almost a slap on the wrist for escalating.
Yes.
And my leader, who I highly respect and has been an amazing leader for me, does the same thing. So we banded together and came to this team and said, it is not negative to ask for help and to raise your hand. I actually have a mantra, and I learned it from one of my favorite mentors and friend, Kim Seals. If you ever have the opportunity to look her up and talk to her, Kim is an amazing woman. She always had this, her big number one thing was no surprises. Do not let me be surprised. And I've taken that through my career as I've grown up in leadership to tell my team, don't surprise me. Don't have somebody let a client or another senior executive come and tell me that there's a problem. You tell me. You will never be held in a bad light for giving me a heads up. You'll actually be in more issue and trouble, if we want to call it that, if I am surprised and blindsided. So leaders have got to cultivate that transparency with everybody. We have got to be transparent with our team members, and they have to be transparent with us in order to ensure that we can operate efficiently and effectively in any environment, but especially in an environment of change.
Yeah. So right now you have risen the corporate ladder, being a successful executive and a leader today. What would you say are the most important attributes that have gotten you where you are, or that you think all leaders should have?
Yeah, I would say number one, being very resilient.
Say it again, being very what?
Resilient.
Resilient.
Yes. A leader has to be resilient. You have to be able to shift, to change, to move to different areas and learn different things in order to stay relevant, but also to keep your people engaged. So resiliency is something I look for in other leaders and people that I'm working with, is how do they handle that change and how do they power through it? You got to be able to laugh through it. You've got to have humor. You can't, you can't get torn and pulled down into the mire that a lot of people want to when there's a lot of change going on. So I think resiliency is one aspect of a successful leader today. But I do want to go back to that transparency aspect. And I'll even kind of shift it a little bit into the ego side of the house. You can't have a big ego when you're a leader. You have to understand, and I hope I've done this. I'm sure I've made mistakes in the past, so I'm not a perfect person. But you can't let your ego get in the way. You're not usually the smartest person in the room. And frankly, I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to have people that are sitting around me, with me, that may be better and at technology and development, that may be better at coming up with a business strategy that around our core strategy for the next 5 to 10 years, or whatever the idea or issue is.
Sure.
I want smarter people sitting around me, because the smarter the people around me are, the better I get. I learn from them, and it helps me become a better person and a better leader. So, you gotta find those leaders that are willing to check their ego at the door.
Well, I could not agree more about the resiliency. So if anybody's listening in as an executive, you realize that you're measured during the change, right? Because that's when everything is going well and business is amazing. We want to take credit for that, but quite often our true leadership skills are going to be reflected when business is difficult. You're going through change, things are shifting. And to stay relevant, not everybody is meant for leadership because they don't like change.
Right.
But you have to, I also say, any people that raise their hand that would like to move into a leadership role need to know that stress/managing change is part of the job.
Part of it.
It's part of it. And that's why you'll see certain people rise to the occasion better than others, because they don't avoid it. They actually go head first into the change to say, how can we make sure we adapt? Okay. So what's one of the things that makes you most proud in your of what you've done in your life? But you can pick any area. But as I interview these amazing executives like yourself, I keep going, you've accomplished a lot. You're at the pinnacle of your careers. You have influence on so many people. But when you really pull back and look, I'd say at the landscape of your life, what are you most proud of?
From a career perspective, because I will say that I am absolutely most proud of my family.
Of
My
course, of course.
husband, my children, that is the number one thing I am most proud about. But from a career perspective, I am really proud of the fact that I said yes when I was asked to do certain things. There was a pivotal point in my career, and I have to say, because I've mentioned my husband, I could not have done this without him and his support.
Mhm.
But there was a pivotal point in my career where I was asked to move. We were asked to move our family. Our boys were babies at the time, and move from Alabama to Ohio for a role. It was scary. We were both born and raised in the South, not been up north other than vacations for my family. And we had a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old. And in addition, my husband was going to become a stay-at-home dad because he was going to leave his job for my opportunity. But I said yes. We said yes. And we dove feet first, head first, whatever it might be, into a role. Frankly, I was in an area that I wasn't 100% sure I knew about. I was going to be doing a very large acquisition for a company on the human resources side, which is what I was doing at that time.
Sure.
But I had to take the leap. I had to say yes. And I did it, and it was hard. It was emotional. It was everything under the sun that you can think of, every change imaginable. But it was the best thing that we not only did as a family, but that was for my career. And it taught me to say yes. Even now, and as early as this past week, I've had to say yes to take on some additional responsibility here at Fiserv. That is a lot, and it's scary, but I say yes, and I learn, and I go, and I move forward.
So I'm gonna guess, and I'm saying this only because I'm reflecting myself onto you and anyone listening in. There's a lot of people that think leaders have zero apprehension, self-doubt, female or male, irrelevant,
Right.
but that you just get into the job and you know it. Did you feel like you knew it, or did you have some kind of self-doubt and you ignored it? I mean, you said yes. That's a very bold move.
Yeah.
As you were just sharing.
No, I have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of it. And I would fathom to say most leaders that I've met have and struggle with the same thing. You question, you wonder, can I do this? Do I know it? I hate the term fake it till you make it. I don't fake anything, but I say yes and I figure it out and I learn it. And so, yes, there is self-doubt, there's worry. I question decisions when I'm sitting at my desk that I make on a daily basis. I worry, am I good enough to sit at the table that I'm going to be asked to sit at? And I think any human has self-doubt. The difference is the mindset that you choose to take. And I didn't know about this. There's a really good book, and I'm gonna forget the author, but it's about mindset, and I will make sure I get it over to you. But there's a difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. An amazing book, and I apologize that I can't think of the author's name at the moment, but an absolutely amazing book. And what it taught me is that I've had all my life, because I will say that I have this mindset I have about saying yes. I think it's been ingrained in me for a long time. I was a very stubborn child. My mother was spent with me very early on about how stubborn and I was, but helps sometimes. But that growth mindset of really being able to look and say, I know I'm scared. I know that I'm not going to know everything, but I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to take the leap, and I'm going to do it. I think is something that you will probably see in many leaders. I have a child, wonderful child that I absolutely adore and love, a son who has the fixed mindset that just says, I can't do it. And he stops and he stays where he is, and he stays in a very comfortable space. So my husband and I are working with him to say, think differently. And you can change your mindset from fixed to growth according to this book. So I'm following this book very closely. But I think that's one of the things that leaders have to realize, and team members and everybody out there, is self-doubt is natural. It happens. It's okay. Don't let it paralyze you to not take action. Everyone has it. We all are supposed to have a level of anxiety. Just don't let it paralyze you.
Well, it almost catapults us into success, because with that self-doubt, you overachieve, right? You work harder to figure it out. But I absolutely love the say yes. By the way, that's for anybody listening in. Say yes and figure it out. Don't fake it till you make it. Just say yes and figure it out. And here's the fun part. You know, I'm a little older than you. I'm just reflecting back going, okay, in my day, if you almost did fake, because you couldn't even figure it out because there was no resources. Today, it's you got Google as your best friend, DuckDuckGo, wherever you, Safari, wherever you're going.
100%.
You got best friends to help you figure out, like, how do I build a resume? I mean, how do I manage a difficult team? I mean, there's all kinds of experts out there giving you free advice. So,
oh yeah, it is so much. I will say, I do believe, because I started work in my career. I don't think it was before Google, but it wasn't, I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have a cell phone.
Oh, now we're dating ourselves, girl.
Right. I know I'm dating myself, but you know, I went to work and I worked on my desktop computer, and I didn't have a cell phone. We had a home phone and all that fun stuff. So I get in those times, right?
Right.
We did fake it a little bit more because we had to figure it out and learn from the people around us and pretend and nod a lot, right? Now there's no excuse to let self-doubt come in play. Google it, get out there, go on to LinkedIn, talk to people, connect with people, and say, help me understand this.
100%. Okay, so here you are today. You're leading an enormous team. I'm guessing the challenge there is, how do you get everybody sort of empowered? How do you help great ideas get to you, if you will, and generate within your teams?
It's hard sometimes when you have larger groups. But I think that and I hate to sound redundant, but it all goes back to transparency. So you have to create an environment for everybody around you and everybody that knows you to feel comfortable to come and bring ideas. And you have to, again, talking about ego, leave your ego at the door and not think that you're going to be the one to solve all the problems. So and I'll tell you, we have formalized meetings where I pull my teams together and we sit in a room, a physical room, post-COVID, physical room, and talk about how we're going to do strategies and what we need to do and how we're going to solve this problem. A lot of the times, and I'm probably not popular in this opinion, but I love being back in the office with my teammates and my peers around me, because I can walk right across the hall and get in front of 3 or 4 brilliant people and say, I'm struggling with this, help me come up with an answer.
I hear you.
So you get ideas by asking. It's not like, you know, I don't have these great ideas that no one's ever thought of, but what I've found in this 25 some odd years of my career, it isn't hard. We just have to go back to the foundation of asking, of talking. It's almost like, what did you learn in kindergarten? Ask when you need help. Communicate, use your words. I haven't said that in a long time, but it's very simple. And if you empower people, then make them feel comfortable to come to you, the ideas that you'll get are amazing. Now, some of them, I will say, some of them you're like, okay, thank you for that idea.
Okay, thank you for your idea. Well, mine is, don't bring me a problem if you don't have the solution with it. But ideas, you know what, you just made me, I'm going to have to ask my team, tell me something that I might be missing. I don't know when's the last time I actually solicited ideas from the whole company as a whole. Anyway, I may do that. So thank you for that. So, all right, let's end with a big question that I love. It's one of my favorites, you know, because you get wisdom with age, you get wisdom, unfortunately, with age. I got a lot. By the way, I tell my kids all the time, I go, you think you're really smart? And she goes, yeah. I have a 16-year-old. I go, do you think you're smarter than when you were 8 years old? She goes, of course, Mom. And I said, right, you're double the age now, right? So you're way smarter. I said, imagine how smart I am. So she's
brilliant.
like, stop it. Stop it. I'm like, I am so smart. I am brilliant. All right. So let's end with the big one. Like, what would you, Tracey Brown, tell your 21-year-old self?
Be confident. Know your worth.
Mm,
Know your value.
mm.
I think that just applies across life, but especially in business and in being a leader, in driving your career. Know your value, know your worth. And then I will say, and I'll repeat it, but say yes.
What an awesome time with you. By the way, thank you so much for
Thank
that. I
you.
just wrote that down. Know your worth, know your value, and say yes. Well, you have an amazing day. Just know you've had an impact on whoever's listening in. I have zero doubt. The big say yes. We might need to get some shirts that just say,
But-
say yes. Except for, anyway, we won't go there with the kids.
Right. We'll
Say yes.
We'll take that offline.
Take that offline. But thank you so much for your time, and what a blessing it was to spend a few minutes with you. Sage advice from Tracey Brown.